just watching the albatrosses. There's this one just here. It must be at least 1.5 meters wide, wingspan, and it's just going round and round and round the boat. It's amazing. He hasn't flapped once. Incredible animals.
Hello Sea Wolves, and welcome back to the show again. It's good to be back live myself instead of my 4-year younger version of myself yesterday, but it was good to see that you all still very much enjoyed the episode, and I thought also a very good timing as we're moving into the Southern Ocean to have an in-depth discussion and show the different things that are the real threats to the skippers. So I was very happy to see that most of you found it very interesting and hopefully entertaining. So today we've got a very full show. Today is the Your Questions show. So I'm going to answer, well, not all your questions, because actually there are hundreds already, but I clustered a lot of things together and I think you guys are going to find it very interesting today. So look forward to that. I'm going to start with the updates from the fleet today, so a bit reverse as usual, so that we get that out of the way first, and then we're going to get into all of your questions. But before we do that, of course, I hope you have something absolutely delicious in your possibly official Seawolf mug, except no substitutes. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Cheers, wolves. So first the update as what is going on now. So Charlie very much in first position together with Sebastian Simon. If you guys jump in the screen here, you can see it with me. And we see that both Jan Richoum and Thomas Rouillant have both kind of taken a strategy, I think started at least a strategy of moving more up north in order to put themselves out of the way of this giant low that is coming towards them, which is now a day away, so it's going to hit them basically tomorrow and into Thursday. And we can trust the prediction by now, and it looks like that's going to guaranteed have gusts up to about 65 knots range. So that means massive seas, very tough sailing, and it looks as if the two men had taken some distance or kind of taken the strategic choice of getting out of trouble moving north, but I think that they actually didn't make it, so that they actually found that it just didn't have enough time, because you can see that they're quite a bit more north here. But if we look at the prediction, so as that's going to be kind of rolling in, you can see that they are actually now sort of forced to go more down, and we can see, so this is kind of tomorrow, this is kind of the area where we see those very strong gusts, and that for them the main kind of only option is to get into the center or near the center of the low, where there's also almost where the wind is lower, and to kind of ride the inner lip, let's say, of this low. So you can see that they'll be kind of sort of sticking to the edge of this sort of inner area. But then, as you know, on Thursday, sort of end of the day, they need to sort of move out there. So then really the worst front will come through. That will kind of pass them by, and they will inevitably get into some very strong weather. Still, you know, like 40-ish knots, 45 knots in the gust, with possibly very big seas from the even stronger winds that have been going through there. While at the same time, we can clearly see here that if you go back to the moment kind of now, that pretty much all the rest of the fleet have chosen, so you can see here, Chiral, Bijou, Sam, Metrocoque, etc. They've all opted to go much more north in order to very much avoid this. So they've just sort of said, to hell with it, we'll sacrifice a few places. The race is still long. We're maybe like nearing sort of 30% or so of the race. And so if you look at how this kind of moves through, you can clearly see that they're really skating the upper part of this storm, putting themselves in good wind, so they'll be able to do good speeds here, but very much avoiding that very dark, red area where the waves are going to be huge. And this is kind of what we normally do. Like when the skippers are there, this is just the normal range of those low pressures that the boats are really built for, that are kind of ideal conditions. So even though the boys in the lead are going to be going fast, they're gonna have great winds, but the waves are just going to be too big. The chance for damage there, no pain, no gain. Is true. So they're definitely going to keep, I think, hold of their first position. But with 4 boats right in the eye of the storm there, I would say that the chance of at least one of them getting some kind of damage is pretty, I would say is pretty high. I would say that, I don't know, I would give it odds of like a 70% chance or something that at least one of them will develop some kind of problem along the way. Not necessarily anything like, race ending or whatever, but probably something tricky that they'll have to deal with, while at the same time all of the races that have chosen to go up, so to lose some position, to let some distance gain between them and the leaders, are going to be having an epic ride here in a nice like 25 to 30 knots, ideal foiling conditions. They'll be a bit more north, so they'll be a bit more in a slightly worse position, but I think they're going to be avoiding a lot of problems down the road. Then the situation for the non-foiler group also gets quite interesting, because if we go a little bit back here in the weather, you can see they're kind of getting ready now to pass the Cape. So that's more or less sort of Isabel Jarske and the rest. But as they pass the Cape, you can also see here that they too will be having very strong winds, 35 to 45 knots in the gusts as they'll be passing the Cape. And we mentioned earlier on the previous show the Agulhas currents. So when there's no wind at all, which was happening to a few of the skippers before, if you have very low winds going through and you have the Agulhas currents, this is a problem because it's a strong current that can really set you kind of off your course, and when you don't have much wind to kind of battle it, it's a very annoying thing. There are a lot of boats around, so it's just a navigationally troublesome fact that it's there. However, in very strong winds, we have the currents going one way and the wind going the exact opposite way, strong winds. So that is going to create a lot of very bad waves, maybe confused seas sometimes even, which means that you have like several wave patterns going in different directions kind of at the same time with strong winds over it. So I do think that for more or less Isabel Jarske and everybody behind that, you can see here if I scroll a bit ahead on the track, it's a bit hard to see because it automatically goes to the front boats. But all of them here are going to be passing the Cape in very strong winds. So that is also something that expects some maybe slight damages or problems there. Like I hope they all get through there fine. Of course, the skippers are all very capable. But it's definitely one of those Cape of Good Hope crossings that is not going to be easy. It's going to be a battle to get through there. And for most of them, it's going to be pretty uncomfortable with very uncomfortable sea states. So that's, even though they're like far behind, that's still a very serious bit of sailing that all of the foilers are going to be going through over the next over the next 2.5, 3 days. So their whole race through the Cape, basically from the start, still about a day and a half in, going to be very strong winds, and then it's going to be a little bit more easy. Again, more ability for them to get sort of into the good winds with a bit more steady sea state, etc. So more or less over the next 2 days, the entire fleet except for the middle, so that's kind of the second foiler fleet all the way up to, I think Boris pretty much.
Hi, good morning everyone. Lots of things going on. We worked fast through the night and we caught up lots of miles, I think, to Sam Davis, if I understood correctly. I need to sleep, but this day was a bit crazy. I was going 35 knots this morning and sitting a lot here, so the night I wasn't sleeping so much. I was pushing and enjoying it. I put my hydro generator down to produce energy, and then I I've seen the first time 30 knots, which is the limit. 28 is the limit. And then 35, then I took the hydro up, and then a little bit later the wind got down and the boat accelerated down a wave. We have massive waves at the moment. I will show you in a second out of the window. And then the head sail, the small Janiker does pop, 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 like pistol shots, really loud banging, while the boat serves down, the apparent goes forward, and it was sheeted on for something like 25 knots truant speed, and probably we certainly had only 18. The wind is very unstable, so, but a sail should be able to resist that, but it didn't. It had a crack in the middle, which I just saw a few hours later. Probably nothing catastrophical, but still a little downer. So in some kind of light wind situation, can lower the whole sail on deck, patch it up, put it back up, and then furl. So it's not easy to do. Also, the glue has to dry before I furl it, otherwise I will never be able to unfurl it. Imagine. Water over deck. Should we have a look outside? Let's have a quick look. Come on. Trying not to get the phone wet. Sunny day out there. Here's my seat. Sunshine. It's warm in here. Super nice. There's a big 30 on the map. 30% of the race. We have already done 1/3, almost 1/3. Super cool. And then I didn't understand what happened. I have to look at the set picture and try to figure out. But I suddenly had cloud cover for an hour, 2 hours, and no wind. So if you see me really slow on the next tracker update, that's the reason.
Also includes Pip, basically all the way almost up to Isabel Jarska, are going to have a fairly nice time sailing for a change. So they're going to just be in 15 to 20 knots. They're going to make good speeds, hopefully maybe gain a little bit of position back on the first group. So not the absolute leaders, but Jeremy Bijoux and all those guys after. I think they're going to be able to match speeds, and the second foiler group here are going to be in a slightly better position. They're going to have a better course, going to be able to stay closer to the ice gate, which significantly reduces the distance. We must not forget that the map predictions at this point in the race can be very deceptive, and because the Earth is round, so the closer you go to the ice exclusion zone, the shorter your round across the world is going to be. And every kilometer that you're higher, the race gets significantly longer, ironically enough. So do keep that in mind, that if you look at Google Earth, it's much more easy to see, but the lower you are, the smaller the circle of Earth that you're actually circling. So in this particular part of the race, it matters how far south you go, and the fact that the middle group can stay a bit more south because of the weather, that sort of automatically gains them miles. So there's a lot of strategy also going on there. So that's kind of what to expect for the next 2 days. Few other interesting updates. Somebody sort of from Conrad's team apparently is watching the show and contacted me with some updates there. So apparently Conrad is battling his power problems still, but has managed to get his secondary autopilot running. So he still doesn't have like satellite communication, and there are a few other bits and bobs that he's still working on getting on. But he has some basic power, and he is able to use his secondary autopilot. Other than that, not much news, but good to know that he's okay, sailing good, and at least has the use of one of his autopilots. Still no real in-depth info as to what caused the fault or anything like that, but hopefully once he gets communications back up fully again, we'll get an update on exactly what went wrong. Suffice it to say, he's doing okay and he's working on it hard. Then Giancarlo Pedotte, Italia's favorite sailor right now, climbed the mast to replace his wind sensor, because apparently that broke down, and going into the Southern Ocean also for him needs, of course, the best possible input for the autopiloting systems and calculations. So he did that successfully. He also had a break in his sail. Apparently it took him 14 hours to fix it, but he has. So for the Italian Sea Wolves out there, good to know that he's kind of in good shape now again, moving into the Southern Ocean. Then I have some good news about the channel, because during this episode, or slightly before this episode, we reached 1 million views on just this race, just the last like 12 or 13 Seawolf episodes going into the Vendeeglobe. So, yay Seawolves, very, very good. And we're up to 33,000 subs now. So 7,000 more to go for our new goal of 40,000, but we crossed 30,000 a week and a half or so ago. So 3,000 extra Seawolves added to the group again. Super cool to see. So that was actually it, I think, for the fleet updates. So now it's time to get to your questions. So I got a lot of questions and I'm just going to run through all of them point by point. I collated some things and I also have some names from the people who put them in there. So if I do butcher your name, like the video. That's the rule on this, because I'm probably am going to butcher some of your names, but I hope it's okay. So the first question, and a very good one. What does IMOCA actually stand for? Why do you call them IMOCAs? IMOCAs stands for the International Monohull Open Class Association. So it's just an abbreviation of the class name as it was originally created. That's why we call them IMOCAs. Then there is a question that I get a lot, is kind of, and Harry Adams is one of the people who asked this question, so thank you for that, Harry, is what kind of advice do the skippers get from their teams as far as like weather routing and all this type of things? And the answer to that question is actually absolutely no information at all. The teams are absolutely banned, as in they will disqualify their skippers if they give them any advice on any tactical, sailing decisions during the race. Those are all decisions that the skippers have to make alone, on their own. It's not a team race, it's a solo skipper race. So there's zero help. The only thing that the teams can assist with is breakages. So if something breaks down that the skippers don't know how to fix, like some electronics or whatever, where it breaks down and they want to kind of assess the problem and work, for example, with an expert, maybe the inventor of the system or a technical person that can then give them information to fix things, but there's no outside optimization or any input on sailing decisions concerning weather or routages or anything like that. Yeah, so it's very important to realize that the amount of involvement that the teams have as far as like any decisions in the race is completely zero. It's just problem solving and helping the skippers do any repairs if they need to, but that's where it ends. And communication, right? So it's kind of emotional help. The skippers can be in touch with their families, things like that. Media, of course, so the teams help with getting the videos to shows like ours. They can do interviews, things like that. But other than that, there is absolutely no actual help with the race from the teams. It's a solo race without assistance. So that's it, just intellectual help if something breaks down. Okay, then Mark Krajar, I hope I pronounced that right, had a question. What surprises me and shocks me, he says, is that the hull is only about 5 millimeters thick. Is this true for the large flat panels on top, so the top of the hull, the big panels on the sides? And I'm curious how this will last in the Southern Ocean. So this is kind of not true, because all the boats are different. So if you watch the earlier episode when I actually visited a factory here in Holland that is building not carbon boats but just normal glass fiber boats, but this goes the same for carbon, is that once carbon is infused, so they kind of heat it and it kind of melts together, and the direction of the structure is very important in the final kind of determination of how strong the carbon is going to be, right? So a carbon has a lattice structure. It has this kind of direct, it's like a weave, right? It's like a basket weave, you can think of it like that. But it goes in several different directions. And so they are able, the creators, the designers of these boats, to create different aspects of the carbon, different strengths, degrees of flexibility, things like that, based on how they place the carbon. So how they structure the carbon on top of each other, how many layers they're using, in what directions across from each other the layers are made. And so it is not so that the entire boat has the same thickness. There are definitely parts of the structure that are much more reinforced than other structures. So even though most of the newer boats, because there are also some older boats that still include some glass fiber, so not all the boats are fully carbon. But for the boats that are fully carbon, so the later series boats that are fully carbon, they also, so it's not just the hull, but they're also very thick carbon beams that you can see also literally in our first episode of this season, where I'm on board of Medalia's boat with her technical director Jav, talking about the different structure. And I mean, there are carbon beams that are like this thick, reinforcing it. So it's not so that that 5mm hull would be able to take all of the beating. It's these beams that are taking the beam, that are taking the real beating, and that they can flex a little bit. So some of the bounces and crashes and stuff are taken by some flexing that the carbon can do. And the actual hull is sort of laying on top of those beam structures, and that's just also there to be able to flex it. And the great property of carbon is that it's just very tight. Right, so it's a very sturdy, very it's a fabric, right? So it's a hard fabric, but because it's a fabric, because it's knitted in a way, it's just very tough. So it doesn't stretch very much, it doesn't pull in very much. It's just able to take a lot of power. So an interesting way to think about carbon, even glass fiber works the same way. All this type of materials that we work with on these boats, is that we call it fabric, right? But it's very much like a fabric. It's like a cloth, only it's like a 5mm, very sturdy, very hard, very tough cloth that is kind of cinched together with a sort of hardener through there that kind of seals it so that water can't kind of go through, the weave, through the seams, which makes it very flexible, sort of optimum flexibility, but also very hard. So that's why carbon is so interesting, that it mixes those two properties. But it's not so that the boat is the same thickness all over. Most of the hull material is, but there are also definitely parts of the hull that are sometimes twice or even 3 times that thickness. Although with carbon, because it's just so strong and sturdy, most of the boat is that thick, but not all of it, right? So that's why it's made that way, and that's why it can take the beating that it can take. Although, we see plenty of damages also on the inside structure, sometimes beams cracking and breaking. So it's definitely not like a super material in the sense that it cannot break, right? Okay, so we have Adrian Koenig. I hope I pronounced that now. What about lifelines on board? Do the skippers use lifelines? And the answer to that is yes. So most of the time you don't see them because they're filming themselves. And if it's very good weather, like if it's like a sunny day, in the tropics when they were moving through there, they might not be wearing lifelines because it's just not necessary. But for the most part, especially when they're in tougher weather outside on the front deck, they will be wearing lifelines. And so just like on any normal, sailing boat, they just have lifelines installed, so along the sides, or it may differ from boat to boat, and they just have a line. It is kind of like a stretchy line for most of them that they can hook onto the lifeline when they're walking around. So they're definitely using lifelines whenever possible. And there might be a few captains who are not. This is always still an ongoing discussion, like do you think the lifelines are more dangerous because they like restrict your movement? And well, this is something that all captains at all times have to kind of weigh for themselves. But as far as I know, for the most part, they are wearing lifelines. And also, one reason why in the newer generations wearing lifelines I think has gone a lot better and easier is because the decks are a lot less cluttered. So there used to be lots of like deck materials and stuff kind of on the deck, which would really hinder you when you're walking around sort of hooked in. But because most of the front decks of the newer boats are actually really flush, so there's nothing there, there's just the sails on there, the furlers, sorry. And that's it. There's no other obstacles that a lifeline could get stuck on or anything like that. So I think that has also actually promoted the use of lifelines, because as most sailors, like I'm the same in that, like most of the time, if I'm in tougher weather and I choose not to wear a lifeline, so sometimes I wear it, sometimes I don't, it's mostly because of practical concerns. So if I need to be somewhere where there's just a lot of stuff around where my lifeline could get kind of snatched on, then my risk assessment is that I'm not going to wear one because I want to keep myself safe and I don't want to get stuck or be encumbered by the lifeline. Whereas if I have to do something and I feel like, oh, it's no problem to wear the lifeline and it's an added benefit, then I will wear it. So I think the better designs of the boat and the fact that they keep removing clutter from the decks, because it's just a better design philosophy to have everything below deck, also helps with wearing the lifeline. So I think that's actually one of the driving factors for wearing lifelines is less clutter, and one of the reasons why it was pretty low always is the fact that there's just lots of clutter to get kind of stuck on. So those two kind of go hand in hand together. Then Mate Jagarek, I probably butchered your name there, says, what are those thin ropes on the top of the boom? Those are lazy jacks. So actually most of the Immocas, pretty much all of them, are suited with lazy jacks for the mainsail. So just like you see on most cruiser boats, they work a bit differently. So they're structured a little bit differently, but they are lazy jacks. So when the skippers take the mainsail down, kind of from about halfway to the bottom and all across the boom, they have a system of lazy jacks, which helps to sort of make the mainsail fall down on the boom, so it doesn't like drop all over the deck and maybe get damaged. It's just an efficient way of organizing the mainsail as it comes down. So you see most cruising boats and Immocas have them as well. So that's what those are. Then James says, is the current Immocca hybrid a foil assistant bow with a planted rudder or stern driven by safety and reliability concerns, or is it just a committee compromise between traditionalists and modernists? Because I don't expect it will last more than 1 or 2 VG seasons. More importantly, Flo, what do you think? Well, this is actually an interesting question because many people always comment on the fact that Immocas are kind of a weird compromise, being a monohull with kind of foils, and of course many of you are also watching the America's Cup, where we have a completely different style of boat, a completely different style of foils, where the boats are all the way out of the water, which creates even much more higher speeds, right? I think the answer is, well, I think there are multiple different groups that will give multiple different answers. The group started as a more traditional monohull size, right? And they're 60 foot because of, old deals that were made with coast guards to exempt 60-foot racing yachts from all kinds of regulation that they normally would have to adhere to. But there's kind of a standing deal still with all the coast guards of the world that these race boats at 60 foot are exempt from that, because otherwise the accreditation and stuff for different countries would be a complete disaster. So it just wouldn't be possible to race around the world if those exemptions from rules were not there. So that's historically why the 60 foot kind of exists at the length and size and kind of shape that it does. I think there are groups who want to keep monohulls, right? So the monohull versus multi-hull versus foiling hull is a discussion that's been going on for a long time. And some people are very embracing the new technology of, hey, let's just foil. It's efficient, it's fast, it's fun, let's go there. There are also many people, I count myself among them, who like the monohull. So who like monohull sailing, who, I've sailed catamarans, I've sailed monohulls. I personally still think of monohull sailing as kind of sailing, right? And catamaran sailing is great. It's just a completely different thing. It's much more comfortable. It's much less rugged. It's much less demanding and all that stuff. And then there's this kind of Immocca kind of foiling hybrid, which, there are many arguments for and against the current way of it. There's a discussion of putting foils, so T-foils on the rudders, right, which has been voted down by the committee so far, even though we've seen Lewis Burton do a great test with that, and then the Immocca was fully flying and doing like really ridiculous speeds. But you have to remember that these boats go into an environment unlike any other. And so an America's Cup boat, for example, would absolutely not survive the Southern Ocean. So the design of the Immocca is ultimately fully made as a racing survival ship, specifically for surviving the toughest, worst conditions at length. So 4 weeks going through the Southern Ocean. And I think that when you look at the Southern Oceans especially, the design makes perfect sense. So if you really truly understand all of the demands that the Southern Ocean places on the sailors, then I think this is actually kind of the optimal design, as long as you include the Moxie trimarans. So the Moxie trimarans that the Jules Verne trophy is using are just a completely different design philosophy. That's a completely open class, right? It's just a record and you can make any shape. And the Maxi trimaran seems to be the optimal shape also, and that's able to survive the Southern Ocean quite good, although we have seen several records break down because if you lose one foil, so if you hit one thing with the foil, and they are quite easy to break, your race is over. So in that sense, again, the IMOCAs are a bit more robust actually as far as platforms go than those Maxi trimarans are in the end. So yeah, it's a big discussion. There are lots of interesting things. Like we could do a whole show with several designers maybe one day on what the answer to that question is, and I definitely put it in the back of my mind. Like that would be an interesting group discussion to have with several of the captains, for example, after the race. But that's my answer for now. So the answer is I don't really know, but I think that for the Southern Ocean, the IMOCAs are actually quite optimum. Especially the new designs make a lot of sense in many, many different ways once you really understand the entire challenge and all the different phases that is gone through and will go through throughout the race. Okay, then we have Amelia Patricus, who says, how do they add water on the new side while tacking? How are the water ballast tanks filled? And so the answer to that is with a scoop. So there are scoops on the back of the boats on the hull, and all they do to empty or fill the water tanks is to turn them around and lower them or close them. So the water tank scoops, let's say, look like a sort of push down, like a circular tube that you kind of push down. And it just has a hole on one side, like it has a scoop on one side that extends outside of the boat on the underside. And when they push it down and they have the hole faced forward, then it's scooping up water because the boat is going through the water very fast. So it just scoops up water until the tank is full, and then they just take the scoop back in again and it's full. If they want to empty the tank, then all they do is they turn the scoop around and they exit it, which means that the hole is sort of facing away, and then the water flowing past the hole kind of functions as an automatic pump, and it just kind of drains the tank. And of course, if the hull is outside of the water, then the water just runs out from gravity. So that's how it works. So there's no pumps, there's no ballast being transferred from one tank to the other. It's just a very very low technology system like that. So that's how it works. And there may be some difference between some boats, but that's the rough design of how it works for all of them. Okay, and also on the Volvo 60s, by the way, it's the same system. Then Annie the Seeker, that's your YouTube handle anyways, says, I would like to know a bit more about the motivation of the different sailors to start in the Vendeeglobe. There obviously is a group with the newer foiling boats who is in it to win it, but those with all older non-foiler boats know that they only have a very small chance to win. So how is this? What are the motivations? And so, because in the end it is a competition, you say. And that's completely true, but I think that this is also a great adventure. So there are many people, I've spoken to many of them also and asked them like their earlier races. Somebody like, for example, Conrad Coleman is one of those, who they absolutely know that they have this unless the entire fleet in front of them breaks their boat somehow, but that's like highly, highly unlikely. So they know they're not going to win, right? Pip Hare was the same last time. And so the race aspect just makes it fun, just like a car rally, has a race aspect, or a golf match, is like a race. But That doesn't mean that you have to compete to win, and many people know that they're not going to be able to win anyways. So the race in itself is so complex, so difficult. When you get into it the first time, there are so many things that you just didn't know, that it's pretty much impossible for anybody to enter this race anyway and win right away, right? So a first time doing really good is very rare, very hard. Johan Richomme is a good example of that this time, for example, doing his first Vendeeglobe and in second place, in first place for a while, etc. This is extremely rare. Those people who know that they're not going to win just do it for gaining experience and for the adventure. So it's a great personal achievement and adventure, just like climbing the Mount Everest, to do and to finish this race, which again, we're underway now. We started with 40, we're on 39. It's almost a guarantee that we're still going to lose quite a lot of the fleet on the way due to various reasons.
Guys, I have a bit of a nightmare on the boat. I did all the checks today. Want to make sure the boat's ready for the Southern Ocean. And even though I haven't used the engine for about 4 days, I wanted to just quickly run the engine, make sure everything is fine. Turns out it's not fine at all. I managed to flood my engine. There's water everywhere, including in the cylinders. Therefore, when I tried to start it, I immediately blew my starter motor. So I have a spare spare starter motor with me, but I also had to do an oil change, and now I have to try and get the water out of the cylinder heads, and that means I am manually kind of turning over the engine. Let me show you what I set up. So I managed to get a line multiple times around my pulley, around the carabiner, and into the cockpit. As you can see, it's a proper workshop at the moment. Very messy, but it's all happening. It's all happening. Woohoo! Got an engine again! Well, that took me 4 hours. Fucking hell. I'm so glad I've got an engine again. That could have been a race stopper, but it's purring like a little cat. Perfect. Cheers.
This is how it is. So if 30 boats finish in the end, that would be a great achievement. So finishing the race is not a given at all, and it's a great achievement. The adventure, the experience of it is absolutely amazing. And it's also a great way to get better, right? So there's many people like Pip Hare is a great example, who start with a small budget, with a kind of a rundown, fourth season boat that they can afford, and just do the race, gain the experience, and then the next season they're back with a slightly better boat, slightly better budget, etc. And by their third, fourth time, they may actually be in a pretty good boat, or even have like a cutting edge boat, and want to make a real run at, maybe still not like absolutely winning it, but getting like a top 10 position, for example, would be absolutely great. So that's kind of the range of the different motivations that people have to do it, yeah? Then there are a lot of, I don't have a name with this, but there are a lot of questions about the collision systems on board. And so pretty much all of the boats this time are fitted with the Oscar collision prevention system, which is a series of, I think it's 3 cameras on top of the mast that are creating, because it's multiple cameras, they create a 3D picture basically, and it has like a night vision camera, it has heat vision, it has different modes. And so that creates like a 3D image of the road ahead of the boats up to a certain distance, basically several hundred meters ahead. And this has an early warning system, so if that system sees something, an alarm will go off and it will warn the skippers that something needs to be done. And there's also integration with the autopilot, so that if something, this is different for different boats, because different budgets, different setups, but there are also some who have literally an automatic avoidance system in case of like a very short distance. So if the camera would detect something, say the skipper is sleeping or whatever, and the system suddenly detects, something like a whale or something that like suddenly turns up like tens of meters in front of the boat, then it actually can overrule the autopilot sometimes and make a quick So the sailors can set this, so they can give like a maximum amount of freedom of space to move for the anti-collision system in a case like that. So if a whale, or let's say suddenly they detect like a shipping container in the water, or some object that they might actually be on a path to collide with, then the system actually can take automated avoiding action by just taking over the steering and making sort of like an emergency turn to a certain degree, because you don't want to break the boat. So you don't want to get an accidental jibe or something like that because you're trying to avoid something, because then you might break your boat in some other way. So it will generally turn downwind or do something that is like the safest of the worst options to do. But that depends on the setup, so that is different from skipper to skipper. But it's called the Oscar system. You can Google it. There are many videos kind of showing this particular system, the many different options that it has. So it's a very cool system. It was pioneered in the last Vendeglobe and worked very well. So that's why almost all of the skippers have it this time around. Then there are a lot of questions on how do the skippers actually sleep. Now this has been mentioned a lot, but I'm happy to explain it again. It's basically in increments of about 20 minutes. And so the historic reason for that is that when you're sailing at about 10 to 15 knots, which is kind of the average speeds that the sailors were always going in races, then the horizon, so if you look at the horizon is about 25 minutes away, right? So you have to think a bit like the distance that you're looking at is, a number of miles in, general weather and stuff. And so if you're sailing at about, 15 to 20 knots, let's say, that means that, 20 minutes from now, you're gonna be like, 5, 10, maybe, like if you're doing like a very fast speed, like 30 knots or something, in like 20 minutes or half an hour, you're gonna be like 12, 13, maybe 14 miles ahead, right? And so the general vision bubble that humans have at sea is around, 5 to 10 miles, let's say, in good weather, that you can like see something like far, like a mountain or a beach, boats a little bit closer, etc. So 20 minutes is a good approximation of that. From a boat, you can look about 20 minutes ahead. You can see about 20 minutes ahead, unless it's like a very big mountain somewhere or something like that. So if you do a check and you look around and you don't see anything, you can rest for about 20 minutes until you get to where you were seeing before. And that's why they just go to sleep. They set the alarm clock for about 20 minutes mostly. If they're sailing really in bad conditions or whatever, maybe 10 minutes, maybe shorter. If it's like very calm weather, they may set it a little bit longer, like for half an hour or something. But 20 minutes is about the average. That's what I always use. And that works quite well. And then you just sleep for 20 minutes and then your alarm goes off, and you usually do your sleeping in a place that's quite close to your instruments or quite close to a place where you can have a lookout. So my boat, for example, has kind of an aft sleeping cabin where I can just open a hatch and look outside and make another check, and then I can go back to sleep again. So I just sleep for 20 minutes, the alarm clock goes off, I stick my head out, make sure everything's okay, and then I go right back to sleep again. And that's what the skippers here are doing also. So they just go for 20 minutes and that's it. And also good to know that most of the skippers will do actually most of their sleeping during the day, because visibility in the day is good. So you don't have to worry so much about other boats hitting you, because other boats, everybody else can see you very good. So it actually helps a lot. That's why you may see some of the skippers in their daily footage that they look a little bit drowsy or a little bit sleepy. That's because they're mostly doing their sleeping somewhere in the day, might be usually in the last part of the day, like towards the night, so that if you do your sleeping between, let's say, 12 and 6, then as it gets dark, you're fresh, right? So you have kind of your most clear moments, your most lucid moments, your most awake moments right after you've had some good sleep. And that's for most of the skippers like the beginning of the real night cycle, because then you have low visibility, you know, it's all a bit more difficult to do in the night. So actually the night is the time when you want to be the most fresh, when you want to be the most awake.
I think I look tired, right? Don't hesitate to tell me, because it's sometimes hard to feel yourself, how tired you actually are. Lots of things going on. We were fast through the night and we caught up lots of miles, I think, to Sam Davis, if I understood correctly. I need to sleep, but this day was a bit crazy. I I was going 35 knots this morning and sitting a lot here, so the night I wasn't sleeping so much. I was pushing and enjoying it.
And it makes sense to do most of your sleeping actually during the daytime when most of the external factors are a bit more easy to deal with. So that's kind of how they manage it. But again, it's an individual choice for every sleeper. So there might be skippers who want to actually sleep in the night, like everybody has their own way of doing it. Perry Killam says, can you say something about their strategy for feeding themselves? Do they leave port with all of their food, or do they get restocked along the way? No, they don't. Are they constantly eating small meals? Do they cook or just rehydrate, prepare meals? Yeah, that's basically what they're doing. So when they just leave, and this is kind of what skippers have always been doing throughout history, they'll take some fresh food. So they'll take some fruits, meat, whatever they personally like, right? So Conrad is a vegetarian, for example, so he's probably not going to be bringing a bunch of steaks. But everybody has their own preferences according to food. So they will bring some fresh fruits, different things that they can keep easily in the beginning, so that they can, Clarice Kramer had bought a bunch of grapefruits, for example, because she really likes them. So everybody brings some fresh things to enjoy later, and it's just good to have fresh vitamins and things like that. So they bring as much as they can, and based on their own preferences and based on how much weight they want to bring, and all the rest is freeze-dried food. So there are these like pre-packaged things, and they have a jet boiler on board. So it's like a small gas-powered water boiler that basically in 1 minute can boil like a cup of hot water. We use them in the Volvo as well. And you just have this big cup, you put the water in from the water maker, and you just boil it in a minute, and then you just open the bag and you put the hot water in there, so it's the powder, and you kind of stir it a bit. And then you wait like, I don't know, it's like 2-3 minutes or something for it to for all the chemicals to reform into like a meat soup or things like that. There are lots of different ones. Like so you have like spaghetti bolognese, and it's like they're all different dishes basically. So there's lots of different options, and I actually think that they're really delicious. So they're great meals. They're very nutritious. So that's very nice, and they're actually really delicious ones. And they're also, it depends again a bit on the skippers, lots of power bars. So lots of like candy bars, power bars, like nut bars, things like that. And what most of the skippers will be doing is they're using day bags. So this is also something that we did during the Volvo, is you have kind of your food in different bags, and you have a bag for every day. So they don't like store like all the pasta in one place and then like every day one, like, well, what am I going to eat? What am I going to cook today? They kind of like just structure it all in bags. So you just have a big bag that has like all the food for, week 1 or week 2 or week 3 or whatever. This has all been pre-thought out what they're going to be eating throughout the whole length of the race. And so week 1, you just grab, week 1 bag. There's 7 bags, there's 7 smaller bags in there. And that's your day bag. So it's like Monday, okay, you just grab your bag for Monday, and there's gonna be like 20 Mars bars or, candy bars or whatever in there. There's gonna be like 5 freeze-dried meals in there, or 3, or, whatever you decide you like for your optimum food. There may be maybe some like fruits or whatever you store. That's all going to be like in the bag literally for that day. And so this eliminates the idea of like overeating or digging too much in your supplies or anything like that. You just literally don't have to think about it at all, because you can just rest in the comfort that you can eat the entire bag that day, right? And this is also kind of a nice, almost I would say like little celebration on board. I remember myself like very, very vividly that every day in the morning it's like you kind of take the bag out and you open it up, and it's a little bit like, okay, what did I put in here, right? It's like a little party of reminding yourself, and that's also a fun part of the preparation, sort of when you prepare like for a longer journey, is that you then get to kind of rediscover what you prepared earlier. So maybe at the end of each week you do like sort of like a festive meal of like, okay, week 1 you put like your favorite pasta in there, or in my case I put like a big steak or something like that, like a frozen thing, so that you have some kind of little celebration after certain time periods, also in your food. And it's a great way to like wake up, grab your bag and be like, oh yeah, I put this in. Oh yes, I'm gonna eat this thing today, right? So it's a great source of fun also. But that's how they do it. So it's just mostly freeze-dried and whatever fresh thing you wanted to bring in the beginning. And then we get to it's already a lot of questions. And then we get to the last question from Colorado, who says, with pretty much everyone outside the top 9 stuck or miles behind, is it reasonable to expect the winner to be one of the top 9 boats? Or is it realistic to have about like a 10th or 15th catch back up right to the lead? I would say that the second option is probably safer. So, although being in the top 10 at this point in the race is certainly predictive of the end result, right? Especially in this particular Vendeeglobe, because the technology on the different boats is very dispersed. So last time we had sort of like proto foilers that were like semi well developed and non-foilers, and the difference between the foilers and the non-foilers was there, but it was far less pronounced. At this point in the race, the foilers and the non-foilers were still like way closer together, right? We saw someone like Jean Le Cam still in like the top 10 at this time in the race last time. So that's different in every race. So there isn't like one way to think about it. But yeah, like it's really true that anything can happen, right? And it's a development class, so everything is new on board every time. And it's still very much possible, like knock on wood, but there could be some unexpected design flaw with the foils that shows after 20,000 miles, right? So though this is like very hard to imagine, but it could be that, like, you know, one day all of a sudden, like somewhere pretty much in the end of the race, all of a sudden we see all of the foilers develop like a bunch of delamination or you know, strange things like that. Unexpected things do happen. And they often happen with those boats that are the most cutting edge. They are usually the ones that will develop, you know, kind of unexpected problems sometimes. And so I would personally say that if you're in the top 20, still anything can happen, and a lead that is like a day or two can still be easily lost if the weather doesn't cooperate, right? And it can happen as far down as the road back to the doldrums, because you saw on the way over the doldrums, you know, we had a pretty big spread. And then in the doldrums, you see everybody getting super close together. The entire fleet like mega close together again. And it's going to happen exactly the same when they have to go back through those exact same doldrums on the way back, right? So that's also a compression zone. And even if some people are 2 days ahead, like it will help. It will absolutely increase the chances of them getting through there before everybody else. But you only need the weather to be kind of severely in your disfavor for a day or two for it to destroy, you know, like a 2,000 mile lead, because the boats can just do such big differences, right? We have a speed record now of 600 plus miles in a day, right? So if you're out of it for 2 days and you're just really kind of stuck in one place in one current, not going anywhere, and everybody else behind you is doing, let's say, 500 miles, they will just eat up a 1,000 mile lead in 2 days. Right? So, and there are many, and it can happen 2 or 3 times that they get stuck for a day. So even a 1,500 or 2,000 mile lead can, in theory, like, it's hard, right? It's not an easy lead to lose, but it's not impossible. And we still have 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months of total racing to do before the first boats get to the finish line. So don't, in any case, underestimate the amount of movement that can still happen there, right? Okay, so that was it, I guess, for this first quick Q&A session of Seawolves. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you really enjoyed it, really like the video here below, and subscribe if you hadn't already done that. And yeah, I guess thank you all very much again for watching. Enjoy your day or afternoon or evening, and see you all again in 24 hours. Ciao, ciao!